Good morning, and thank you for joining me today. What we'll be doing is reviewing the concept of what's known as a compound and a complex sentence in English. The distinction between the two is really slight. So we're going to go ahead and jump in first to the definition of a compound sentence. Put simply, a compound sentence is the combination of two or more independent clauses that are linked using what's called a coordinating conjunction, which you should be familiar with at this point. Sometimes they're referred to as fanboys, such as F for, A for and, N for nor, O for or. Excuse me, I missed B. Sorry, B for but, O for or, wow. Y for yet, and then S for so, just as an example. All right, now, here we have, for the example sentence for a compound, I wanted to go to the beach, but, which would be our coordinating conjunction, it started raining. So you'll notice in both clauses, which is I wanted to go to the beach and it started raining, both would be considered independent as they're able to stand apart or alone as sentences of their own without requiring another to lean on, as it were. However, when we take a look at what's called a complex sentence, this is where we have a combination of those independent sentences we talked about, or clauses, excuse me, and we join them with what's called a dependent clause. Now, a dependent clause, just as the name suggests, depends on another clause in order to complete the thought. Essentially, you can think of it as an incomplete thought, okay? Now, traditionally, you'll see them start with like a relative clause or pronoun, excuse me, and that's kind of your indicator that what you're dealing with is, in fact, a dependent clause, as it suggests additional context or information would be required in order to substantiate or complete the idea. All right, now, the example provided we have is although, which would be your relative pronoun. So although it was raining, I decided to go for a walk. Now, which among these two clauses, right here and here, would you consider to be independent? Which could stand alone? Well, if you take a look at that second clause, I decided to go for a walk. We have a subject, our verb, and in this case, the preposition. All right, in this case, this would exist independently. However, its neighbor, one that comes initially, is although it was raining. My cue is it begins with that relative pronoun, although it was raining, could not live as a sentence on its own, as it suggests additional information is needed in order to complete this thought, right? Although it was raining what? So here, they're linked together using a comma, right? No need for a coordinating conjunction here, though you could. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start with 5 sentences. First, we're going to identify whether or not it is compound or complex just by the definitions we've covered, and we'll go through reasons why. All right, for sentence number 1, we have, she studied hard, so she passed the test. Now, I do see 2 clauses here. She studied hard, which we would classify as independent, subject, verb, and modifier. Then we have, she passed the test, subject, verb, object. Both sentences are independent, joined using so, which is a coordinating conjunction, part of the fanboys, which is the acronym I mentioned earlier. All right. So that makes it a compound sentence. All right, now sentence number 2. After I finished my homework, I watched TV. Well, after would be my relative pronoun here. So after I finished my homework, doesn't seem to exist or doesn't seem to be able to exist independently. So I would classify this initial clause as dependent. However, the following clause, I watch TV, subject, verb, object, is an independent clause. So by definition, dependent linked with independent would suggest or would tell you that we're dealing with a complex sentence. Moving on to sentence number 3. Excuse me, we have, we can go to the movies, or, coordinating conjunction, we can stay home. Let's examine the 2 clauses I see, which are, we can go to the movies, subject, verb, and object, or, we can stay home, subject, verb, object. Okay, independent joined using or, which is again our coordinating conjunction. Therefore, by definition, we're dealing with a compound sentence. Sentence number 4, because it was cold, we stayed indoors. Again, 2 clauses, but I noticed this first clause begins with this relative pronoun because. So that's kind of your clue. Because it was cold. Well, if I were to eliminate that second clause, I could not identify this as an independent clause, as it does not complete a thought. Therefore, I can tell that since we're starting with that relative pronoun, we have a dependent clause linked with what I would assume is independent. So let's see. We stayed indoors. Subject, verb, object. Okay, here, independent, dependent. Joined together, classified, complex. And our last one, which is sentence number 5, we're going to look at, it starts with, he likes to read, and, coordinating conjunction, he also enjoys writing. Let's examine both clauses just to ensure that both are in fact independent. He likes to read. Okay, subject, verb, object, followed by he also enjoys writing. Subject, verb, object. Independent, independent, linked using coordinating conjunction and therefore compound sentence. Okay, now for everyone at home, please do me a favor and in the comment section below, if you feel so driven or just on your own in a notebook, please produce a compound sentence based on the definitions we've covered and a complex sentence based once again on the definitions we've provided. All right, again, this was just review, or this is just a coverage of the concept of both a compound and a complex sentence in English. Don't forget, compound sentences consist of 2 independent clauses joined using any number or any one of those coordinating conjunctions, whereas a complex sentence must consist of at least 1 independent and 1 dependent clause joined together, not necessarily using a conjunction, but linked together in some way, whether it's through punctuation or otherwise. Okay, I certainly hope this exercise was helpful to you, and if it was, I would encourage you to like the video. It would help me a lot, and subscribe if you would like to continue to practice with me. All right, thank you for joining me.